the American people know no one is above the law. We commend the FBI for following the facts and reopening the investigation. But I think this is part of the way the American people need to count the costs in this election. Do we want more of the fast and loose ethics of the Clintons over the last 30 years, or do we want a clean break? Do we want to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.?
I will say one thing we've really seen since that letter came out, and then the director sort of backtracked on it a day later, and then there's been subsequent stories this week about internal turmoil within the FBI. We've seen it add to the energy on our side. People on our side view this campaign as so important.
People don't trust her to be commander-in-chief. They think she's disqualified herself. She's unfit because she runs around with confidential information on some pervert server, having her maid printed out. I mean, this is somebody who's totally disqualified herself from being commander-in-chief based on her own actions.
Look, I think what Mr. Comey did, just 9 days ago was a mistake. I think it broke with precedent. I think it was criticized roundly by Democrats and Republicans, including two former deputy attorney generals who served with him in the Bush administration. I think it was a mistake.
They showed us that people were being told, you need to get them in because they're giving to the foundation. I think the real corruption is the lack of the media being willing to be honest about how much lawlessness the Clintons stand for.
Just a sampling of yesterday's Sunday talk shows as we continue now on America Talks Live. And we invite you in at 1-877-639-7629. That's 1-877-Newsmax. Still with us from Newsmax, Washington, former executive director of the GOP Trust and investigative journalist Scott Wheeler, and Democrat strategist Kevin Walling. You see Kevin right there, and there's brother Scott. And gents, we have a call here we're going to take at 1-877-Newsmax. From New York City, SW is on the line. SW, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you, JD, for having me. I certainly appreciate it. I appreciate your show, too, for letting America have its say and getting away from the corporate media standpoint. I'll make my points very quickly. What I don't understand is how Hillary Clinton is not being prosecuted under the federal RICO statute, Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, because that's what the Clinton Foundation is, especially with pay-to-play. She should be able to be charged and indicted on, in my humble opinion, obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, contempt of Congress, influence peddling, failure to comply with subpoenas, and now getting into other areas, possibly wire fraud, and then I also want to make the point that the FBI has become the new Keystone Cops. The way this investigation has been handled, by them giving immunity to almost everyone, even people who were lawyers. They didn't even squeeze anyone properly to get the information.
Gotcha, SW. We hear what you have to say. We appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's let our guest respond. And let me turn first to Democratic strategist Kevin Walling. Kevin, you heard SW's concerns right there, and it has been noted that in the letter that Director Comey sent the relevant committee chairs and ranking members, silence from the FBI about the Clinton Foundation. We can assume that investigation is ongoing, and as SW points out, it could be problematic. Kevin?
Well, I think it's important to remember all of the good that the Clinton Foundation does around the world and compare that to the Trump Foundation. This is a foundation that has secured millions of dollars in HIV/AIDS relief in sub-Saharan Africa. This has empowered young girls with education and health care around the world. And you compare that to the Trump Foundation that spent $22,000 on a portrait of Donald Trump, $12,000 for a helmet signed by
And as you mention that,
I think it's important
I think it is important to make that distinction. And you talk about a portrait, but now we're getting reports that Chelsea Clinton's wedding was paid out of money going to the Clinton Foundation. So again, when it talks about grandiosity or use of money for personal things, the other sticking point, Kevin, is quid pro quo. Let Scott in on this to comment about what's going to happen. Let's say, a lot of us don't want to see this, if Hillary wins tomorrow, does the Clinton Foundation investigation stop forthwith, Scott?
Of course it does. It's barely hanging on as it is because the Justice Department run by corrupt people like Lynch and the others, are shutting down the FBI. And where I would disagree with the caller, SW, is the FBI isn't the Keystone Cops. It is predominantly made up of good, solid agents. You've got the top of it who is compromising with the corrupt Justice Department, allowing them to steer them. But regarding the Clinton Foundation, for crying out loud, it is a massive slush fund for Clinton's election campaign. That's what it was set up to do, and it's been servicing the Clinton cronies, those who have been lying for him, liars for hire, for years. They've been using this charitable money, tax-exempt money, to pay off cronies, to keep people on the bandwagon, to help protect them. And that's the reason for its existence. As a journalist, I investigated the Clintons for decades, and I can tell you one thing for sure: they don't do anything that isn't in their own personal best interest, even at the cost of the law or ethics.
Well, to that point on ethics, this is another thing, gentlemen, that when I heard about this and I heard the actual soundbite, I could scarcely believe it. President Obama sitting down and basically saying illegals have the right to vote. I want you to listen to this exchange.
Many of the millennials, dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country, are fearful of voting. So if I vote, will immigration know where I live? Will they come for my family and deport us?
Not true.
Okay.
And the reason is, first of all, when you vote, you are a citizen yourself, and there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, et cetera. The sanctity of the vote is strictly confidential.
So I hear that, Kevin. I hear the President of the United States accepting the value judgment of his questioner, calling illegals citizens, and hey, it's a private ballot. There'll be no repercussions. Jeff Sessions said that Barack Obama needs to clear the record on this and speak definitively about not allowing legals to vote. Why would he muddy the water like that and claim that over the weekend?
JD, the president isn't muddling any water. What he said throughout that interview on Me Too, which is a program geared towards Latino young people, is citizens who vote and Latino citizens who vote should be protected under the law and free from any kind of voter intimidation that's going on in the polls right now. Throughout the interview, he constantly referred to Latino citizens that vote, not illegal immigrants, not people who are here.
Kevin, you and I both
voting
know
throughout that interview. And if you watch that interview in its completion, you'll see that, JD.
AP in its lexicon eliminates the word illegal and the term illegal aliens to blur the lines here. Let me show you the Jeff Sessions statement.
There's
then I'll
no
let Scott.
blurring of
yeah,
lines.
of course
There's
there
no
is.
blurring of lines,
Well, here's
JD.
his chance. Here's what Jeff
Absolutely
Sessions
not.
says.
Absolutely
the president.
not.
Well, then the
Citizens throughout that
president
interview,
wouldn't have any
Latino
problem.
citizens
Then
who
the
are being
president would.
maligned
Now
by
hang
Donald
on.
Trump in this
Hang
campaign
on.
have paid.
Hang on. Let's hear what Senator Sessions has to say. The president must immediately issue a statement to make crystal clear that only citizens of the United States have the right to vote. That would clear it up quite simply. Scott, why won't the president do that?
Because he intended, as the other guest was just saying, there were no blur lines here. It was abundantly clear the point Obama was making, and that is you can steal a ballot and vote, whoever you are, regardless of your status. That was abundantly clear, and why would anybody doubt that? Look at what he's done. He used the IRS to suppress legitimate dissent in this country. He has punished his enemies as he promised he would. Why on earth would anybody think such a little thing like having illegal aliens vote in an election, in a U.S. election, would be beyond his reach here? The other thing is, look, isn't that what they've been accusing Trump of doing, is inviting Russia to interfere with our election? And here they're allowing people from a foreign country who are not even registered to be here to interfere with our election. The duplicity is staggering. If hypocrisy were a combustible gas, there wouldn't be a Democrat Party in this town left. There'd just be a a smoldering cinder in a crater.
Well, the people will decide tomorrow, and obviously you gents are on either side of the issue, and for purposes of full disclosure, obviously you know where I'm coming from, but we appreciate the chance, Kevin and Scott, to air all this out, and we look forward to speaking to you in the days ahead, no matter the verdict of the voters tomorrow. Stay with us when we come back. Donald Trump warns us about a rigged system. What about hackers getting in and messing with the results? We'll talk about that and have some of your calls after this.